Hello and welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode, what are we up to? Well, we're looking at this Ford All Cars range for Australia, August 1979. Last week we looked at the Escorts, this week the Cortinas. Hello and welcome back. Now if you're new to Quarterlight, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube, looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, and sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're interested in cars, car brochures, looking back at cars gone by, please consider subscribing. It is all completely free. Now, like I said, this August 1979 all-range catalogue for the Ford range in Australia. Last week we looked at Escort, this week Cortina. So there's quite a range, so we should throw that on the board now. So here is that brochure, Ford Cars catalogue, August 1979. Now the last time we looked at an all range catalogue for Ford, it was this one. Ford Cars all catalogue, November 1978, so not quite a year between the two. Last week we looked at Escorts, which had certainly increased the range, looked a little bit more interesting, give us a bit more information about some changes there. Now the Cortina hasn't actually changed hugely from November 78, to be honest with you. Very similar range before, though some of the images are different in this catalogue. So I'm not going to spend that long on Cortinas because we did a huge brochure on Australian Cortinas earlier on in the year, I'm going to say. So we'll certainly look at Cortinas, but like I said, I'm not going to go into as much detail as we did here. But you can certainly find this particular catalogue in sort of the back catalogue or back videos, and lots of Cortina videos on there as well. We'll also have a look at this brochure if I can manage to find it with one hand. There it is. That is the UK Ford brochure for 1980. So we'll see what the Cortina range is here, and then we'll see what the Cortina range is in Australia. So here we go. First page for the Ford Cortina. Drive it, it makes beautiful sense. So the Escort, yeah, it came with a few extra models, a few changes by 79. The Cortina, not so much. So this possibly could be a shorter episode, but we'll see how we get on. And then next week, we're looking at the Falcons and the Fairmonts, and they changed hugely from November 78. So they are a vast difference, and we'll probably even compare them to our Granada because they have got some similarities in the looks, although probably less similarities than the looks would tell us, to be honest with you. Anyway, let's concentrate on Cortina today and zoom in on this first image. First image, like brochures often do, we'll showcase the Ghia on the main Cortina page. Here it is, the Ford Cortina Ghia sedan. And we'll certainly straight away notice some differences with the UK one. Obvious differences are those very different door mirrors that Australia like to use. There are many changes on there. What we'll do when we actually get to the Ghia, we'll kind of like compare with the UK version in a bit more detail. But let's turn to the first page. So first model up in the Aussie range was the Ford Cortina L. Slightly different in the UK range actually. We started with, now as you know, we've been using this all model catalogue January 1980 to compare and contrast the different specs between each model. We're now at the Cortina. Now the problem here is we've now moved on to the new uprated Cortina in the UK, but not in Australia. So this is actually the Mark V rather than the Mark IV Cortina, known as the Cortina TF in Australia. So we've already got that, and indeed we can see it again as early as this is actually a 1979 brochure, September 79 brochure. It's saying the new Ford Cortina, these new little features on there. So it would be unfair really to compare this with the Aussie brochure. In Australia they didn't get this new Cortina until April 1980. So obviously we can say there's going to be lots of differences between the UK Mark V Cortina compared what they're still selling in Australia as the Mark IV. So we will have to go back to an older brochure. This is for February 78, where we can actually look at the Mark IV and we can compare it a bit more like for like. And in this brochure, the UK brochure, it starts with the Cortina Saloon, not even the L. So that's interesting, and then we move up to the L model. So there is a more basic one. It's actually shown here as a 2-door version, but we could get a 4-door in the UK as well. So some of the highlighted features for the Australian Ford Cortina L was steel slotted road wheels, steel belt radial ply tyres, reclining front bucket seats with perforated vinyl upholstery, and certainly we'll notice that the seats are way different for the Aussie market. We also get such luxuries as inertia reel front seat belts, loop pile carpet, directional power boosted ventilation, styled right hand exterior rear view mirror, quartz halogen headlights, deep section bumper bars with protective rubber end caps, and certainly the bumpers do look very different to the UK bumpers, that's for sure. We got interior courtesy lights operated by front doors, 3-speed heater demister, lockable glove box, cigarette lighter, prismatic day-night interior rear view mirror, black non-glare windscreen wipers, front fender side marker lights, again something a little bit different, steering column control stalks for turn lane change, etc, etc, you know, the usual sort of switches. But like I said, the seats were the main difference, I think. So there are the Aussie seats, these bucket seats with these sort of integral headrests in there. Very nice. You can see this one is an automatic on the L model as well, and we've got these little unusual little images of what the tyre looks like and what the disc brake looks like for whatever reason. It does interestingly say, and this is a difference actually with the Cortina, the Aussie Cortina, between the 78 and the 79 models. So it starts by saying, and it's only small so I can read this out, interior shown with optional 3-speed T-bar automatic transmission, available at extra cost, which we saw. It then goes on to tell us perforated grain vinyl seat facings, as shown in the illustrated, are being progressively replaced on Cortina L and GL sedans and wagons by non-perforated grain vinyl, and may not be available when you place your order. So, like I say, perforated vinyl has gone to non-perforated vinyl. So, vinyl, pretty much a horrendous material to use in any country, but particularly Australia. But maybe the perforations helped a little bit, but you know, Ford said no, that costs too much, let's get rid of the perforations. But anyway, let's look at the UK seats. So here is your Cortina L interior. You can see a much more simpler trim, black, all black, very black actually on this particular yellow example. So this is just a fabric trim, so no vinyl. So in some ways that's better, although I'm sure these black areas would still get very hot if they were in Australia. But certainly a fabric tends to be better, apart from the fact that you tend to wear out a bit quicker. But the main thing, they aren't as nice as seats, and aren't these nice bucket seats, are they? Back to the Aussie brochure. See if we can clear that picture up a little bit, get it a little bit cleaner as we look at some of the differences. Obviously that big bumper is a difference. Also, there's kind of like this gap between the grille and the bumper, and these little holes in there, where the UK brochure, actually the bumper would actually be flush with these headlights. The bonnet, a little bit, just a small little bit of an extra bonnet bulge than we got in the UK by the looks of it, but Of course they had bigger engines on there, didn't they? And then of course these little side markers on there, which are obviously going to be some kind of like Aussie regulation. Other differences, as we mentioned, the wing mirrors there are a completely different design altogether, and of course that different seat design, which is a lot nicer. Wheels look like the same dead basic wheel that you could get on the Cortina. In the UK you could option it for like a steel sort of sports wheel, but these basic wheels do look very similar. Anyway, let's move up the range. So the next model up is exactly the same as what it would be in the UK, so the Cortina GL. And in fact it looks like these have got the sports road wheels that you could option on the L's in the UK by the looks of it. I'm not going to spend too much on it, but we may as well just have a look at what these key points are for the GL. So steel sports type wheels, interior courtesy light, operated by front and rear doors, and with these additional features which are not standard equipment on the Cortina L. Front centre console, electric rear window demister, AM push button radio, electric clock, outboard passenger grab handles, rear seat folding centre armrest, and body side protection mouldings. Looking inside the GL, the dash does look slightly different actually. Gauge is really poverty spec, really, considering this is a model up, but the steering wheel is going to be very different. It looks like it says Cortina on the centre there, which is unusual. Looks like we've got extra vents on the Aussie versions. I don't think they're on the UK ones. Let's just throw up the UK spec interior. There you can see that different steering wheel straight away for the UK version, and like I said, everything's a little bit higher up. We don't have these high up vents, but of course in Australia we need as much ventilation as we can get, I guess. Back to the Aussie brochure showing heated rear windows of course, and then like I say, that much nicer seats that we get in the Aussie version. This quite, what would you refer to it as? In the Land Rover world you call this a cubby box, but this sort of like centre console, which is a nice place to lean your arm on. Looks like very different door cards as well, but we'll look at that in a moment. In fact, let's look at that now, why not? There's your UK spec different door card there. Also the GL looks like it's got a little bit of a touch of wood on this particular version as well, which is a little bit unusual. We also got vinyl roof there on the UK version as well. Now you can see now on the UK version how the bumper's like tucked right up to the lights there, rather than that extra sort of like drop down on the Aussie versions, and of course the UK chrome door mirrors. But like the Aussie one, we got these sort of like door protection strips now on the GL. It then moves on to the wagons here in L and GL form. I always thought they made a nice looking wagon actually. I think the main problem with the Mark IV was rust. I don't know in Australia. I'm sure there are some, particular coastal areas, I'm sure they rotted just as terribly as what they did in the UK. I think the rot was the main problem with them really. We get some nice images here though. Seat folded down is just one seat that flops down rather than a split. You can see that different Aussie dash though, with those vents there at the top. Obviously the rear of those, quite unusual for UK anyway, those bucket seats, but of course in Australia that was the norm. Also showing a rear wash wipe. It's telling us this is the GL version. Tells us below the Ford Cortina GL interior with optional AM, FM, multiplex, push button radio and stereo cassette tape player. Available at extra cost of course. Lovely, lovely main image there though, isn't it? Again, of the Cortina GL wagon. Apparently this has got the optional GL luxury pack. Available at extra cost, and why not? Probably the luxury pack had things like these sorts of interesting roof bars on there, and these spotlights, which actually really suit it. And I do like this colour actually, it's a pretty nice looking example of a Mark IV. It does tell us later on you can get this wagon as a Ghia as well in the UK. Same thing, L, GL and Ghia, although you could get that super basic, not even an L in the UK. And now that moves us up to the Ghia actually, and in this particular brochure it's showing the Ghia Saloon and the Ghia Estate all shown on one page. UK Ghia Cortina, Mark IV Ghia Cortina at the top there. So we've got things like these sports wheels. Now they've got this sort of like a chrome beauty ring, although they are just a steel wheel. Ghia badge at the side, vinyl roof. We've even got head restraints actually, which we'll notice in a minute in the UK. Bumpers have now got these overriders on them, but they are in a different position than the Australian one. Again, notice we're kind of like almost flush with the headlights there. Barely any sort of bulge on the bonnets at all, just a little bit of a interested mark, I think, more than anything else. So if we just compare that with the Aussie one, you can see that bit more of a bulge on there, a little bit more of a gap between the headlights there. Overrides in a different spot, but that was probably to do with regulations, exposing this little bit of extra ventilation, I guess, for the hotter climate. The biggest thing is those rather nice alloy wheels, and they do look really very nice on this Mark IV Cortina. Just about make out the interesting seats and that, again, that colour coordinated door mirror shown here on the driver and passenger side. A look at the inside. Now we have got that 4-spoke steering wheel, as we can see on there. We've now got a rev counter on there as well. This is the Australian brochure. As we can see, there's that extra ventilation there for the Aussie Cortinas. You can see the UK one and that drop down, so them vents, there's no room for them vents to go in there. But we have got nice head restraints and nice seats now on the UK Cortina, I think, and those rather nice door cards as well, with that bit of carpet on there. I always thought the Ghia was certainly a very nice example. If you don't mind me just moving the camera up a moment, we can also see such luxuries as a nice sunshine roof. I've just zoomed right into the UK one because this one, rather interestingly, has got the optional extra headlamp wash. Very unusual to see that on a Mark IV Cortina, even a Ghia. And then back to Australia, back to the Cortina Ghia, but this time the Estate. And again, the Aussie spec Cortina Estates or wagons look absolutely fantastic. I love the wheels there on this particular example, and of course different engines, of course, but we'll take a look at that later on. So some of the features you got on the Cortina Ghia in Australia would have been the 4-spoke soft feel steering wheel, cut pile carpet, carpeted kick pads on doors like the UK ones, cloth seat facings, intermittent windscreen wipers, styled right hand remote control exterior rear view mirror, rear outboard inertia reel seat belts, sedan only. Interesting. European style alloy road wheels. Yes, it's calling them European style, although very rarely would you've seen those alloy wheels on your Cortina Ghia in the UK, although I'm sure there were some option for an alloy wheel in the UK, but certainly not standard. And with these additional features, which are not standard on the Cortina Ghia, or GL I should say, vinyl roof, sedan only. In the UK, your estate or wagon in Ghia form was or did have the vinyl roof, and you can imagine how much vinyl they had to use for that. Tinted band laminated windscreen, tinted side and rear glass, tachometer, oil gauge and trip meter, styled left-hand exterior rear view mirror, matte pockets in rear of front seats, deep section body side protection mouldings, bumper rub strips and overriders, carpeted floor in luggage compartments, vanity mirror in passenger side sun visor, and it says Cortina Ghia wagon includes these extra features: chrome finish roof rack, which we saw there, and a cut pile carpeted load area. And then that takes us to the packs. In this case, it's the GS Rally Pack option. Of course, in the UK on our Mark IVs, we could get the Cortina S, which was just there to say I want a Cortina S. In Australia, similar to the Escort actually, you could get the Rally Pack option as an available extra cost on the L and GL models, and interestingly even on the Estate, which would have made an interesting Estate. It's on the Estate, rather annoyingly on the crease though, but that's certainly an interesting Estate, isn't it, with the GS Rally Pack option and those interesting wheels which it shows us again in a little bit. Those driving lamps, always Ford, and the driving lamps was always for the sportier models. These big black bumpers, of course, black. Oh yeah, not a colour keyed door mirror. We've actually given them a black door mirror in this case. But yeah, certainly looks interesting, particularly with those unusual wheels. Now if we move down, and there is that interesting Aussie Cortina interior. So it tells us this is available for the L and the GL. I'm not going to read it all, but we'll read the bit where it says the GS Rally Pack is designed to allow you to drive your own grand sport touring car, to make your Cortina into a sporty looking sports handling machine. All you do is pick your model, Cortina L or GL, 6 or 4, sedan or wagon, then add the GS Rally Pack and exciting things will happen. Along the side, bold body side tape stripes, black paint treatment at the front and rear and around the windscreen and rear window, black finish bumper bars with protective rubber overriders, Volante Sports alloy road wheels. Up front there's a twin long range halogen driving lights, also black finish to merge in with the grille. Inside there's the European 4-spoke soft feel steering wheel, which we had a look at, and comprehensive instruments, tachometer, trip meter and oil gauge, etc, etc. But it then goes on to tell us, you know, an exciting range of colours as well, so these sorts of brighter colours which would look really nice in the Aussie sun, I think. So there's other packs you can get though. You can get air conditioning, I should say, for your Cortina, available on all Cortinas. Even that basic L can have air conditioning. Makes sense, doesn't it, for Australia. You can also get the GL Comfort Convenience Pack, available with the GL Sedan. Consists of styled right-hand remote control exterior rear view mirror, left-hand exterior rear view mirror, rear outboard inertia reel seat belts and a cloth seat upholstery. We can get the GL Luxury Pack, available on the GL Sedan and Wagon. For the sedan, it consists of all GL Comfort Convenience Pack items above, plus stereo cassette tape player, long range driving lights, front and rear bumper overriders. For the GL Wagon, it consists of a styled right-hand remote control exterior rear view mirror and left-hand exterior rear view mirror, stereo cassette tape player, long range driving lights, front and rear bumper overriders and a chrome roof rack. So that was all the features on that GL, if you remember when we looked at that GL wagon before. And then finally it tells us some information about the GS instrumentation and then power steering for your Cortina. Reduce steering effort for ease of parking. Variable ratio steering geometry. Gives good response and requires only 3.2 turns lock to lock. Available with 6-cylinder models only. Yep, we get 6-cylinder models luckily in the Australia, but we'll look at those in a moment. But yeah, power steering on those 6-cylinder models would make sense. So that takes us to the full range of the Cortinas for Australia in 79. But let's have a look at the engines, have we? So we could have 4-cylinder models, of course. So a 2-litre cross-flow 4-cylinder engine with either a 4-speed manual floor shift or a 3-speed T-bar automatic. Standard across the range as a manual, optional if you wanted the automatic, of course. But you could also get a 6-cylinder model, so the 3.3 litre cross-floor 6-cylinder engine with either a 3-speed manual floor shift or a 3-speed T-bar automatic. So standard with the manual on the L sedan and wagon, by that I mean the GL sedan and wagon. Not available for the Ghia models though, and then the models you could have it, you could option the auto, of course. But then that takes us to the big engine, the 4.1 litre cross-flow 6-cylinder engine with either a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed auto. Optional, unusually, on both the L and the GL, so even your very basic L, you could get the 4.1, which would have been interesting. And actually, it's a standard piece of kit for the Ghia models, so a nice Cortina Ghia wagon with the 4.1 would certainly make an interesting one. And of course, then you've got the option to do a automatic there as well. So certainly very much a different range of engines for Australia. In the UK, of course, the engine choices were vastly different, as were the fuel prices and the distance needed to travel, so a completely different market. But the base model actually came with a 1298cc OHV engine, so a 1300 engine in your Cortina would be ridiculous for Australia, I can hear you all saying. You could also get 1600s and a 2 litre, and the biggest engine, we could get a V6 actually, a 2296 cc V6 was your largest engine option at the time. And that would take us next week to the Falcons and the Fairmonts. From the front, very much looks like a Ford Granada, doesn't it? There is a UK Ford Granada for context, so very much looks like that, although it is quite different. But we'll do some comparing and contrasting with that, and certainly with the 78 Falcons, because they were certainly a hugely different vehicle again. So that will be an interesting one next week to make lots of comparisons. So there we go, the Cortina Aussie journey ends there. Jot in the comments, of course, your experience with these in Australia. Our main experience in the UK was rust. They rotted out in no time at all, and it's amazing there are any left at all in the UK, to be honest with you. Rust was a huge issue. They kind of like improved it very slightly, I think, on the next version. I think the Mark IV was probably the worst of them all for rust, actually, in my view. They did make them a little bit better on the Mark Vs, but still, Cortinas and rust kind of like went hand in hand. But certainly the big engine Cortinas have always really fascinated me. I'm not sure if the handling matched those big engines, but certainly in the comments please jot that information down. It's always very interesting. And like say next week, the 79 Falcons, which will be an interesting one to look at, particularly from me who understands more UK cars, kind of like comparing it to our Granada, which was our biggest car we had in the UK, biggest Ford I should say in the UK. And of course I think the Falcons were a little bit bigger, but we'll kind of like look at that next week. But thank you so much for watching today. We'll end as we always do by saying please do consider subscribing. It is all completely free and I appreciate it as well. It's helping you find the episodes you want to see and helping the channel grow and give you better content. We'll end with this rather wonderful Aussie Ford Cortina Ghia, possibly with the 4.1, we don't know, but doesn't it look wonderful with that big roof bars on the top there. But thank you so much for watching today. Please do visit once again. Have a great weekend. We'll see you very soon. Take care and goodbye.